Let's grind up a game here, ladies and gents. Okay. So we are playing the black pieces. Let's play Sicilian defense. Ivory, Livery, thank you for the brand. Let's play Sicilian defense. And what should we do? What Sicilian should we play? I don't know. Let's play. I don't know. Let's play d6. Okay. He's gone bishop c4, so mercifully we don't have to choose. Now, we faced this move before many, many times, and we already know how to react to it. And the way we react to it is not to do anything special. We just need to develop our pieces normally. I like to start with the move knight c6. It's very flexible. We don't need to play e6 immediately. There's no immediate danger to the f7 pawn. Since we've already played d6, okay, so now there is a danger to the f7 pawn, but now the move e6 makes more sense because it opens up the attack on the knight. e6. Now he's the type of player probably to go queen h5, queen f3, and, well, I know what you guys are thinking. I don't really see 1400s play like this very often. What do we do? Whoa, guys, look carefully. Look carefully. Everybody know. You're trusting. You're trusting. This is classic trusting. People are thinking knight e5. The knight on g5 is hanging. He never defended it. Right? So, and now do we move our queen back? Do we? Ooh, no, we don't. This guy has had better days in his chess career, I think. Okay. We're going to keep taking stuff. Queen takes b2. Wow, that's ridiculous. Another one? We could have taken with the knight too, but let's evacuate our queen simultaneously. And not much to comment here. He finally castles. We're going to develop our knight. Well, it's in Indonesia. It's different time, I think. But okay. Whoa, Ergonogo with a 5 gifted. Dang, girl. Thank you, Ergonogo, for the 5. Really appreciate it, guys. How is the 1400 making these errors? I don't know. I mean, this guy, we're just going to keep developing. This guy, that was weird. I mean, that's uncharacteristic opening play by 1400 for sure. And Liquescence with a prime. So we're just developing our pieces here. No need to reinvent the wheel. Castles, and then we're going to probably open up the center. We're up 2 pieces and 2 pawns. All we need to do is complete our development. Rook fe1 doesn't change the fact that we should castle. 100 bits for Cinnamon Saucer. Yeah, so this is what he was preparing. Now, if we want to play 5-head, the move queen c3 is what I think most of you guys would play. That would be fine. Is there a 5-head idea? And how do I see this idea? Again, this is this concept of pattern recognition. Whenever there is a bishop on c4 in the Sicilian, as we've seen from my lessons with Charlie, where I was showing him lines like this, you have to constantly be looking for ideas that involve getting a piece onto e4, either through a sacrifice. Usually the move is knight takes e4, but this is a variety of that. And then piece lands on e4, we go d5, winning back the piece with interest, because this bishop is generally important. Here we have to take with a queen because the queen is hanging. Thank you, Mukimich, for the 6. Knight takes. And the reason we embark on this whole expedition is because we want to trade pieces. We're up 2 pieces. So this simply simplifies the position and wins the game essentially on the spot. Thank you, HKBKH, for the 12, and Babas. Can't even keep up with the subs. It was important to establish, by the way, that this bishop on e7 is protected by the knight. I did notice this as I was calculating. All right, let's get our last undeveloped piece out and hit the pawn. Let's get our other bishop to f6 and hit the pawn again. Now, there's many ways of winning this position. We're up 1 million pieces, so it really doesn't matter. As I always like to say, the traditional plan is to make a passed pawn and push it. Couldn't be simpler, but in this situation, we have some open files, so we could perhaps offer up some trades in order to ease that process. What would be a good, solid move in this position here? Thank you, Locomotive 007. Yeah, why don't we go rook f8? I would totally make some Luft, too. It's weird to talk about these things now. Totally take the rook and take the pawn. We don't have to make Luft as long as you can, you can see that there's a rook on a8. Gotta make sure you're not hallucinating or you'll get checkmated. Thank you, Cinnamon Slicer, for the 100. Now we've cleared the path for the d pawn. The game is over. Yeah, very simple stuff here. d4. Now, one good way of paving the way for the pawn, rolling out the red carpet. Where should we put our bishop? Where should we put our bishop? Yeah, so bishop c2 is great, and then d3. You guys have seen this idea before, right? Very elegantly, the bishops are covering both subsequent squares. The only thing that remains is to get the knight out of the picture so that he's not able to give his knight up for the pawn, or something to that effect. And we can do that by, of course, playing the move knight to d4, offering up the knight trade, which is good independently, but also paves the... Okay, he's going to simply blunder the knight. And yeah, this is a very one-sided game. I don't know what got into this guy, but it is what it is, guys. Yeah, we'll play another one, obviously. Now, okay, so knight c6, knight g5, e6, right? This is where, when your opponent plays like this, as Curious with a 5, damn, bro. Thank you, Curious, for the 5 gifted subs, man. The support has been unreal today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate it. Okay, so when your opponent plays in this way, you just don't want to trust them, right? You wanna be very critically engaged to the position because you never know what kind of bluffs they're going to try to pull on you. Now, how would you respond to the move queen h5 here? I want you guys to tell me what would be the best way to respond to this. Cinnamon Slicer with the tier 1. Now, what you should notice here is that the knight on g5 is a tier 2 undefended piece. And it's defended only by the queen, which is easy to kick away. We go g6. No matter where the queen goes, there's going to be a fork or a pin that displaces the queen and severs the connection with the knight. So queen g4, for instance, knight e5 is a fork. And if queen h4, then we go bishop e7 followed by h6. Right? So this kind of stuff, it never flies. All right. The rest is very simple. I'm not even commenting. We just take all his pawns and win the game. Let's get one more game in. Everybody ready? Any questions on this before we get to the next game? So this was a bishop c4 Sicilian. Now, technically, I've heard this referred to as the Yudasin Sicilian, named after Grandmaster, Russian-Israeli Grandmaster Mikhail, I think it's Mikhail Yudasin. And the Yudasin Sicilian is usually played with the move d3 followed by c3. And then sometimes the queen comes out to b3. But knight g5 is where I think the theory ends. So, in any case, on to the next one. Would it have been worse to capture the knight rather than the queen? No, knight takes would have been fine. It doesn't really matter. I just wanted to extricate the queen preemptively, just so it doesn't get tangled up. Doesn't matter. We're up a million pieces. Let's move on. The Bowdler attack. Okay. So let's play e4. Thank you, Where the Chosen Juans, for the tier 1. And he goes knight c6, the Nimzovich defense. As you guys know, Min actually likes to play this move. And this is what I would call a transpositional opening. Large bloops with 5. It has a very high probability of transposing into another opening. It has its own theory, but it often transposes. And white has 2 fundamental moves. Thank you, large bloops. White can play d4, and that's the more independent move, because black often responds with e5 or d5. That's the traditional Nimzovich opening. But I propose that it's much simpler here to play what other move that encourages a transposition into a Ruy Lopez or Italian. What other move seems natural here? If you play the Vienna, you can play knight c3. If you play the Ruy Lopez or the Italian, you can play knight f3. And the only way to keep the independence of the line is to play d5. If he plays this, we'll talk about it. He goes g6, just like Min. It's actually, yeah, it's not bad. Knight c6 is not a bad move. It's not refutable directly or anything of that sort. Now it's time to play what move? Should we play bishop e5? Should we play like we're playing a Ruy Lopez? No, right? We shouldn't because he didn't play e5, so now there's no need not to play d4. Okay. So, yeah, this is Min. So a lot of you guys probably are tempted to play d5, which is not bad, and I've played it against Min, but the knight can slide into e5, or it can even drop back to b8. The bottom line here is that white often bites off more than he can chew, right? We often advance all these pawns, and then we find that black starts attacking them, just like in the hypermodern opening. So what other alternatives exist here? Well, we can simply develop the knight to c3. But one very measured positional move that I like in the Russian school of chess spirit, biting on granite. How do we make sure of that? Some of you are proposing this move, c3. Let's make the two pieces bite on granite. Now, what about the knight, you might ask? What do we do with the knight? Well, the knight could later go on to d2. And watch as I orchestrate a scheme of development that's very common in the games of Garakemsky, for example. He plays this against the Perk in the modern. This bishop on f1, it goes to d3. And it goes to d3 in order to lend further support to the e4 pawn. We're going to develop our pieces in a way such that we are keeping massive control over our center while developing in a relatively active way. So let's go bishop to d3. Kind of like in the London, you guys see how this bishop is sort of developed in the shadow of these pawns. These pawns act as bodyguards to the bishop, stopping knight b4, stopping knight e5. I kind of like this way of developing. Now we castle. Right, start polemic. Well, I overused that phrase. Now, this bishop on c1, where do you guys think it should go? Where do you guys think it should go? Should it go to e3 to defend the pawn? No, I'm tricking you guys. We don't need to go to e3 because that is the function served by the c3 pawn. The c3 pawn is giving enough support to d4. We just don't have the equivalent here, so that's why we got the bishop there. Now let's consider bishop f4 for a second. Looks good, but it falls right into the move e5 with tempo. Black can play rook e8 or something and then go e5 with tempo, which I don't want to encourage, and so that leaves the g5 square. Right. So a6, and final link in the chain. This b1 knight, well, it needs to go out. Let's go knight b to d2. We're not afraid of him going b5. It's not particularly scary. In fact, it weakens his position a little bit. It weakens the knight and stuff. And now we need to continue making improvements to our position, bringing pieces into the game, and preparing some sort of a central pawn break, which would be premature at the moment. It would be premature at the moment because if we were to play e5, he would not do that. He would take on e5. And if you look at this bishop on d3, it might end up being hanging. Let's go rook e1. Very nice. You guys have a good sense of this position. I like it. All right. We don't need to play a3. We're not afraid of b4. And the reason why is because we have a pawn chain. b4 doesn't threaten anything, and to the contrary, it actually weakens more of the queen side, right? Queen a4 and stuff becomes possible. That a6 pawn becomes weak, right? Black doesn't have enough firepower really on the queen side to get anything done. That's part of the appeal of building this kind of pawn chain is we can just, it's very, very solid. We don't need to keep maintaining it, right? It's like a move-in ready house. You don't need to invite the remodelers. Everything's in place. Just turnkey. Okay. Knight f1, knight g3 is a phenomenal idea. That's a very typical continuation in such positions. Okay. So let's think about what to do. And in fact, I love the move knight f1 here. Get the knight to g3, accumulate pieces on the king side. Does that make sense? Much like in the Ruy Lopez, let's go knight f1. Yeah, his knights are sort of dangling around. Ooh, ugh. Okay. So that's a very ugly looking move. Now, where should we put our bishop? Well, let's think about it for a second. Bishop h4 is one candidate move. We can also keep the bishop on this diagonal. But let's try to understand where we want our bishop to be given where we want our other pieces to be, right? And that's a good way to think about it. Now, where is this knight probably going to go? Well, as I said, we want to go to g3, right? Could you guys identify the problem with putting the bishop on h4 in that regard? What's the issue there? Right, it would potentially fall into a g5 trap. So let's drop the bishop back to e3, not because we need to protect the pawn, but just because it's a good square. Now we can complete the maneuver, and we can later perhaps go queen d2 and bishop h6. That would be another good idea. To further soften up black's kingside. Now, we might not be playing in the most ambitious way. I think there were probably better ways to target black's position, but I'm just trying to showcase the typical setup here and how solid it is. Now let's start adding a little bit of heat to the position. There's many ways to approach this. We can go on the king side, we can go on the queen side. But one risk-free way to apply pressure if you play the Ruy Lopez, you should be familiar with this idea. Black often has a pawn on b5. It sticks out like a sore thumb. What can we do with that pawn? How can we pressure it? And also try to open up some files for our rook. What move comes to mind? This is super typical concept. a4. Beautiful. Now, you might look at this for a second and say, why is that a dangerous thing? Well, first of all, we're threatening to capture the pawn. Second of all, if black takes on a4, we take with our queen, and black's position begins to collapse. And now he goes knight c4 and panics. First thing I see is that the rooks are in a standoff. Thank you, to Dirk. So the move a takes b5 must be calculated. But what happens after knight takes b2, which is, I'm pretty sure, what he has in mind? Well, if you look carefully, when the moment that he played f6, and this is where observation comes in. The moment that he played f6, you should have made a mental note to yourself, I have a check on b3. This is the moment when I noticed that. So if you're already primed to see that, well, it shouldn't be hard to spot queen takes b3. If he plays knight takes e3, I like taking with the f pawn in order to open up the f file where we might later attack and beef up our central pawns. He should take on e3. He should take on e3. That's his only move. I hope everything making sense so far. Yeah, he does. I mean, this guy is good. He's competent. And now we're threatening to win another pawn, so he's probably going to go a5. Nope, he's going to blunder another pawn. Well, there was nothing he could have done because a5 would have met with b4. And yeah, that's why you never play f6. This is the result of playing f6. We're up 2 pawns. We have a knife on f6 on a6 here. And our center remains as solid as ever. Okay. No, it's not that f takes is a crazy tactical move. It's actually positional, I would say. Now, how are we going to improve our position here? What are we going to do? He goes c5. Well, there's multiple ways to approach this. d5 is very possible. We could try to lock the position up. And in fact, I quite like that idea. Locking the position up here is a good idea because it appears to me likely that we're going to maybe push the b pawn at some point and try to make something of our double passers. But on the other hand, d5 does leave our bishop very, very passive, right? It leaves our bishop blocked by a bunch of our own pawns. There's really no necessity. Why did we do all of this if now we're going to close up the center? So many good moves here. Let's play very directly. We can play b4. Bishop c4 is a great move, although it does walk into knight b6. Rook f1 is good repositioning the rook. But you know what move I like? It's not bishop c4, because that walks into knight b6 with tempo. What's a move that has a similar idea, but doesn't fall under the crosshairs of the knight? So it's a tricky move, guys. It's a bishop move. Bishop b5. I'm going to play the move because we're low on time. Bishop b5. This is one of those moves which it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it does, but one of the things that it does is builds a battery, queen a4, hitting the knight, and preparing a7. If knight b8, we go a7 and the knight is trapped. That's the specific line I calculated there. So it just puts pressure on the opponent. Puts pressure, you know, a Russian move. It's hard to always quantify what those moves accomplish, but he has a very five-head idea here, which I missed. Let's see if he finds it. And then we have an even more five-head response. The five-head idea is to go knight a6, bishop takes a6, rook takes a7, winning back the bishop and winning that passed pawn. I missed that, but that's pretty five-head. Right, well, that was one head by me. I should have seen that. Oh, yeah, I need to improve my camera angle. I might switch to my desktop for the Russian stream. All right. I stream from a laptop right now. Now, he doesn't see it. Now, wait a minute. A takes b8. Can't he take our queen? Well, no, right? Because a takes b8, we make a queen. So the funny thing is we can probably get away with taking, because I don't think he sees knight a6, but we're going to try to play objectively here. So we win a piece. He has to play rook takes b8. And then we have a little bit of an issue to deal with. Our bishop is hanging, and we have a bunch of pawns that are hanging. We just need to solidify everything. We need to glue things together. Let's glue things together, preferably tying down the rook and the queen. What move comes to mind in that regard? Yeah, the move c4 comes to mind. It's kind of a glue move. And we have a very five-head move in response to d takes e3. I feel like I've overused that. Rather than just passively moving the king aside, we can go directly at the source of the problem, which is the queen. Well, we can think about queen a5, but let's find the best execution for that. Queen a7. Now, I'm going to have to play a little bit faster because I certainly don't want to lose on time. I have to say this guy is resilient. He's a good player. This has not been an easy game. But now he starts to fall apart as we grab this pawn, and we're up a full piece with total domination over his pieces. But let's not relax. f4 is a threat, forking the rook and the knight. Now, you can defend against forks by moving one of the pieces involved. Moving the knight seems very passive. Well, does the rook have any homes? Well, if we move the rook, doesn't that blunder the pawn? Nope, because the knight defends it. Where can we move the rook? Where can we move it so that it does something? It covers the diagonal. Yeah, the x-ray, exactly. We can go rook a3 to stack the rooks, but let's look at the other weaknesses. We have a weak pawn on d6. Let's attack it. Right, so I'm looking around the board. What can the rook do? Rook d3. Simple, straightforward logic. Okay. And look at the pawn on c4 gluing the bishop. This is why I always say pawns are the best defenders, because they're so permanent. We don't have to worry about the bishop again. Always. Без чая не могу. d3. Yeah. Good one, good one. Rook takes d6, rook d7 is coming in. The game is basically over. Okay. So the idea here is also to go h3 potentially and kill the bishop. All right, so does he want h4? He doesn't really want h4. We can go h3 here. We don't even have to rush taking the pawn. I have a bit of a uneasy sense that he might do something. On the other hand, let's just take. I don't think he has anything. If he goes h4, we take it with a knight. And then that very same knight will go to g6 and crush him. But if you felt unsafe or uneasy, you could go h3 and attack the bishop. Here, it was important to establish that the knight covered that square. And that's it. It's game over. Knight g6 coming. Boom. Goes the dynamite. And now we start taking stuff. This is the fun part, ladies and gentlemen. This is the fun part. We could have also taken with the rook on g6, forking his two bishops. Okay. Let's grab this guy. And now, 1 minute, plenty of time. He played very well. No, this was not an easy game. Okay, so how do we approach this kind of position? The simplest would be to go knight takes e4. But if we look very carefully in such situations, undefended pieces are crucial. And as Lono points out, this is a very typical fork. Rook g6, boom, boom, game over. Right, so you're always looking for... Man, I can't help it. You're always looking for these tactical observations, trying to always get a leg up on your opponent. And, well, we can take any bishop with either rook. Don't let this pawn through. Stop the pawn with a king, right? My Russian stream is beckoning. It's beckoning. Mate in 1. Oh, mate in 1. Yeah, I did have mate in 1. I missed it. I didn't see the bishop. I forgot about it. It was so glued together that I forgot about it. But let's do it now. Yeah, it's mate. I forgot that the bishop was covering the square. Lol. Okay. And I tried to... You know, this is your resident 3000, ladies and gentlemen, missing mate in 1s. So... Knight c6, right? The Alekhine is knight f6. This is a completely different opening, and it definitely is underrated. Now, d4 is the principled way to meet it, and now black has d5. This is a line I find to be incredibly annoying for white. I don't like playing this because this is like a form of the Scandinavian where black often quickly castles long. There's a lot of theory here. White's supposed to be better, but I never know how to play. And white can get crushed. White can literally get crushed here. I have gotten crushed in this kind of line because this pawn is under fire. e5 is coming. Not a good line to play in blitz. And another move for black is to play e5. This one is, I think, a little bit more innocuous. White can just take on e5 or white can go d5. But even this kind of close center position, the knight reroutes to g6. It can be hard to play this with white. And so I would not give people what they want. Yeah, exactly. I think black players, you know, they like these positions. That's why I play knight f3. If they go d5 here, well, you can take it, go knight c3. And there's still a lot of theory here, but you don't have to go d4. You can go bishop e5 and emphasize piece development. All right? So you can look up the theory here. You don't need me to tell you the theories. You can look it up. But this is a very dangerous move, and you shouldn't take it lightly, in my opinion. All right, g6. So g6, d4. And g6 is possible. There's nothing wrong with this. I think this guy took a page out of Min's book. We go c3. Well, we're doing a 6,000 sub celebration, which is solid, which is definitely solid. Now, c3 makes sense to everybody, right? Biting on granite. Now the bishop has been, the sting has been taken out of the bishop. So d6, bishop d3, protecting the center. I think our opening development was very straightforward. Bishop g5. Now again, bishop f4 walks essentially right into e5 with tempo. So for instance, bishop g4 would be a good way to preface this. And for example, h3, bishop takes f3, and there comes e5 with tempo. We don't want to invite that with tempo. So we want to go bishop g5 just to... In fact, it's the opposite, right? We're discouraging e5 because that would open up a pin. Now, if h6, then I would recommend simply dropping to h4. Sometimes in this line, g5, bishop g3 happens. Black can go after the bishop, but notice that he's really, really weak in the king in doing so. So this is a price we are willing to pay. All right. Yeah, castling queenside can be possible, but I like the setup a lot. Knight bd2. What I want you guys to understand is that a lot of people automatically go a4 in such a position to stop b5. And a4 is fine, but not all quote-unquote threats need to be stopped. In fact, b5, I think, is a positional mistake. Because there's you definitely sack on g5 in such positions. No, definitely, this would be something I would consider. although maybe premature. I mean, e5, I don't think white has enough firepower, but you should definitely consider it. Now, I will say, yeah, b5 is a positional mistake because there's simply, you know, the fact that black plays this alone doesn't mean anything, if that makes sense. And to the contrary, black will later have to deal with this weakness after we played a4. Right. Unnecessary prophylaxis. Prophylaxis is great, but only when it's, when it's necessary. Yazao, thank you for the tier 1. Rook e1, knight d7, knight f1, transferring the knight. Bishop to e3. Importantly... Oh my lands. Oh my lands. What the frick is that as champ with a 50? Damn, girl. Oh my lands. That's unbelievable, champ with a 50 tier 1 subs to the community. What a legendary donor right there. Wowza. Wowza, wowza, wowza. Well, that's our own little celebration in here. My lands, girl. Yeah. Well, I will be after some more of these donos. You're a dude. Well, damn girl is just... Thank you, Proffer. Thank you, champ. I really appreciate it. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thanks for all your support. Okay. Yeah, in response to every no. F6, bishop e3. So before I was rudely interrupted, if anybody else wants to rudely interrupt me with 50 subs, I will probably allow it. Yeah, it's become sort of an exclamation at this point. If anybody wants to rudely interrupt me, I will allow it. Although I don't love it, I'll allow it. Thank you, champ. I really appreciate that. Fantastic stuff. So back to the game. Bishop h4, just to recap, the problem is that he's going to play g5, and the bishop is going to get trapped, which is why we go bishop e3. And one piece of advice that I have to share, and I say the same thing when you're deciding which rook to put on a square, look at your other rooks, look at your other pieces, the way that, it's like a Sudoku puzzle. You know where some of the pieces belong, you may not know where the others belong. Where the others belong can be a direct product of where, you have to take the stuff that you do know, apply it, and that tells you stuff about the pieces which you aren't sure where to put, if that makes sense. And this is a good application of that. Okay, so e5, knight g3, knight a5, and now comes a4, striking on the queen side, striking right where it hurts, that pawn on b5, sticking out, and making black regret it. Now, if black had tried to support the pawn with c6, we would have, of course, taken it. And either b4 wins the knight simply, or after c takes b5, we can play b4 and even take the pawn. So this is just bad for black. He should have... I don't even know what black can do here, honestly. He should probably just go bishop b7 and lose the pawn. But knight c4, we play a takes b5. This wins the knight. Now we're winning a pawn. We win another one. Now this move bishop b5, right? How did I find this move? In a certain sense, I think my brain is automatically tuned to look at the drawbacks of every move. The move c5, I noticed that it weakens the complex of light squares around the queen side. That should make sense to everybody. And so the first move I thought of as bishop c4 is Sky Bobbles, you recommended this. But then I saw, he has knight b6 attacking the bishop and covering the square. So do we have another way to do the same thing? Yeah, we kind of do. Bishop b5, maybe go to c6 later. Not immediately, because we're going to lose the pawn. And then I see, well, we also have queen a4. Okay, so queen b6. Yeah, it's sort of a Russian... Now, it's not the best move, given that I missed the tactic, but the logic behind it is still instructive, I think. So knight b8, a7, and here he missed a golden opportunity to go knight a6, and I'm sure we probably have some sort of a win here. But the point is bishop a6, rook a7, and the bishop is toast, regardless of what we do. So in this position, we wouldn't take on a6. We'd find something else to do. Maybe queen a5, maybe something to that effect. Well, thanks. Oh, another 5-head move could be knight d2, knight c4, sort of Benoni style, lifting the knight in. Anyways, one of these things would have definitely been good. He takes, we take, we go c4, gluing in the bishop. Now, how did I see queen a7? As some of you were indicating, what I don't like about the situation is the X-ray that the queen exerts over the king. And I want to deal with this. You can deal with this from two different angles. Sometimes people only, I like to think of this as targeting the symptoms versus targeting the cause. You know, if you, the taking the Tylenol move is king h1. You target the symptoms, but this construction is still a little bit nasty. Think about, to always ask yourself, can I target the cause instead of the symptoms? The cause being the queen on b6 and its control over this pawn. When you ask yourself that question, queen a7 is far likelier to be found. Thank you, Star. He takes it. Now, black had one last chance here to complicate the game. Does anybody see what it is? If you were playing black here, wanted to complicate the game, there's one last thing that black can do here. What is it? Think about how to defend this pawn tactically. How can black defend this pawn, but in a tactical way? The move is very good. F5 is absolutely right. Правильно. Правильно. F5, that means correct in Russian. F5, and if rook e3, then F4 forks bishop. Oh, god damn it, I can't draw yours. Forks the rook and the knight. What would white have done in response to this? I mean, it doesn't really matter. We can go knight g5, trying to stick the knight into f7. And we aren't afraid of this, because our pieces lend perfectly fine support. F3 will never happen because of the g-pawn. So white is winning here, but that would have been perhaps the last chance to complicate things. Once he loses the pawn, the game is over. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any questions?